He lost. I like wieners.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, the French teacher Grober.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thanks so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, if you're into TV, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Lovecraft Country, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and special events. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
So, Gene, this week, one of our listeners, George from Las Vegas, decided to take us back to the year of 1991 and review the American action comedy, If Looks Could Kill.
When George wrote in and said, I want to start by saying thank you for all the hours and hours of amazing content. From Game of Thrones to Westworld and all the movies, we all enjoy hearing your takes. I hear your criticisms and realize I am more in line with Gene and his opinions. However, the outside introspective thoughts of Big D and Roger's crazy interpretation of what's going on, I love it. I feel like that you guys are my old group of friends from high school that used to spend hours talking about movies and our theories. I must say, I love you guys. Now that the ass kissing is out of the way, I have to tell you about this childhood teenage movie love of mine. I can't count how many times I've seen this film. I do know that I had a VHS copy of it that I used to watch weekly until it wore out. The summer of '94, when I was 14, I got my older sister to watch it with me, and to my amazement, she loved it too. As I've gotten older, I realized looking back that she loved the movie for many different reasons than I did. Grieco was pretty handsome back then, but we enjoyed it all the same. With the amazing premise, high schooler mistaken to be an MI6 operative, and unique over-the-top characters, I was hooked the first time I saw this movie. Characters such as Augustus Steranko, the French teacher, and the old lady Ilya Grunt, whose special weapon was a gold necklace that turned into a whip, ridiculous. Each character just takes the spotlight each time they are on screen, and not to mention the French teacher reminded me of my English teacher from the 7th grade with the same speech patterns. This movie sparked my love for the spy genre, of which I can't get enough. But I always love the ones who can laugh at themselves. Bond can be a little too serious sometimes. You need a little camp. But for some reason, this movie has always held a special place in my heart. I would like to commission Richard Grieco's If Looks Could Kill. Even though his career wasn't as long as Hollywood planned for him, I love this movie. I have to do a rewatch soon with my sister now that almost 30 years have passed. I hope it holds up, and I hope you guys have fun pointing out the fun and ridiculousness of this amazing film. George from Las Vegas.
You know, George, we won't see the letter that you wrote, the commission letter. Only Big D sees that until, usually right before we record. Every once in a while, my notes on a movie directly match, almost word for word, the commissioner's notes. And that's when I know we got a winner. That's definitely the case here with If Looks Could Kill.
And this commissioner's letter was written quite a while ago. This was submitted when George said, hey, I'm a listener. I would love you to review this. He then commissioned it and just attached that letter. So this letter is, I think it's from 2018. Who knows when this is from? But George has been waiting for this for a long time.
Well, George, I hope you're still with us. If Looks Could Kill, released in the United Kingdom as Teen Agent, is a 1991 American action comedy directed by William Deere and starring Richard Grieco. The idea was to blend Anthony Michael Hall from John Hughes films with a James Bond adventure. If Looks Could Kill bombed in theaters, it opened 11th place in the U.S. and grossed less than $8 million at the end of its U.S. theatrical run. Roger Ebert, whoever he is, didn't like the film at first, but eventually gave If Looks Could Kill 3 out of 4 stars, saying the film's over-the-top goofiness was intentional, and he saw it as a subversion of the spy film formula rather than an incompetent ripoff. However, on Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a 29% approval rating. So Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. I only vaguely remember my family watching this on VHS. I know they rented it. I remember seeing the box, but I don't think I actually watched it. But I was obsessed with 21 Jump Street as a kid. You had Johnny Depp, Peter DeLuise, and Richard Grieco as high school cops. Like, fuck yeah, I wanted to be those guys. I tried to do my hair like Richard Grieco's when I saw him on TV. And then in one episode of 21 Jump Street, I noticed he didn't have any arm hair. And so I went into the shower immediately, took my mom's razor and shaved all my arm hair off, which sounds terrible, but they make for really good face scratchers. Like when you're doing your heads down nap time after recess in elementary school. So pro tip, kids, if you're listening, scratch away.
So I had never seen this movie, but I remember very distinctly the movie poster. But for some reason, I've always, like, until we actually started watching this film, thought that it was Johnny Depp on the cover of the movie poster. And of course, I was wrong because it's Richard Grieco, but they just look in this time period, the way they were styled, like pretty similar, like their haircuts, the clothing they're wearing. And so I didn't know anything about this going in, especially including like who actually was in the movie. But like Eugene, I loved 21 Jump Street growing up, and that description, a blend of Anthony Michael Hall with James Bond, I was like, yes, please.
Yeah, so just like Michael Corben, I graduated high school in 91. But I never watched 21 Jump Street. I never watched this movie. I was not a big fan of him or Depp until Depp stuff later on. But I don't know what the fuck Roger Ebert was smoking. You said he came around prominently on the back of the DVD because we watched the DVDs. He said, this movie is a head-on collision between Bond and Indiana Jones. So everybody out there can know this was one of those rare movies that we could not find anywhere. Could not find it streaming, could not find it anywhere bootleg, no pirate sites. So we were all forced, well, I went to my local Orange County public library system, and I was blown away. I got to tell you, everybody out there, spend a couple hours, go get a library card, and you'll be blown away by what the modern library is. I don't think that I'm going to rent anything more on iTunes. They have every movie, and yes, they had 1991's Richard Grieco classic, If Looks Could Kill. So support your local library. And this is the first week I think we all watched the DVD.
People who are listening out there, if you're having a hard time finding a DVD at your local library, Amazon.com. It's a website. You can search for the thing that you want, and they'll deliver it to your house the next day for $12.
Yeah, guys, I own one DVD now, and it's If Looks Could Kill. So I had to borrow something to watch it with. So thanks, guys. Been a little step back in time.
Well, Big D, now that we've established no one has seen this movie, let's go to the trailer.
Everyone makes mistakes. Take me, Michael Corben. I was just your average underachiever flunking out of high school. And the only way to graduate was by taking a class trip to Europe with a French club.
Michael Corben, first class.
First class? How? Ow! There's been a mistake here, which led to a case of mistaken identity.
Walk quickly, they already know you're here.
Hey, what are you doing?
Eric Richardson, British intelligence.
It turned me into a secret agent. Well, just who do you think I am?
Michael Corben, deep cover agent for the CIA.
Michael Corben, French class reject. Suddenly, I'm filling someone else's shoes.
They'll adhere to any surface.
And driving the company car. Get out of town. I can drive this baby out of here right now.
Yes.
Piece of cake. If I can just figure out how to get the window down. Yeah, funk driver's ed, too. I'm not complaining. They're gorgeous women.
Bonsoir, Monsieur Corben.
Boner. Swar.
There can be no more mistakes. Kill him.
Dangerous men. Now, all I have to do is rescue a beautiful girl.
We're all gonna die!
No, Corben's here.
That's what I mean!
Save Europe. Graduate high school.
Who are you with?
The French Club. Hey, no problem.
Richard Grieco, if looks could kill.
18-year-old Michael Corben, played by Richard Grieco, is a handsome slacker who learns he cannot graduate high school without a French credit. The French teacher, Mrs. Grober, played by Robin Bartlett, and the French club are headed to France for summer school, and Michael must accompany them and participate if he wants to graduate next summer.
So the movie opens up and automatically I'm questioning the solution that, Michael is given here. So he's the slacker, he isn't able to graduate. He needs to get this French credit. So instead of doing extra credit, why not fly abroad for a couple of $1,000? And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And my family would have never gone for this. I was actually dealing with an issue the other day where parents now complain when required school supply packs, because it's not like it used to be where you get to go with your parent and pick out all your school supplies and you spend a couple $100. Instead, you pay a flat fee and you get this huge school supply pack that's for $150. And parents complain about that. And the other thing too is I also wish that language classes were this important, that they actually were needed to graduate, or that language teachers have this much power. The truth is nobody cares about the electives. If it's not tested, fuck it. And so Grieco would not have become a spy with the French at all. I think it would have been more he would have had to be set up to go to some math conference at MIT or some weird testing seminar and have a real genius thing, but not for French, unfortunately. Nobody cares.
Ash, I believe you in 1991, because I remember I played sports and my mom never came to any of it. And I took report cards home, but that was about the degree of involvement. Now I have a friend who takes his kids to hockey and then stays at the hockey rink while they're practicing, not games, but practice. And I was like, you just fucking, what do? You just sit there? He's like, yeah. I go, well, do you get work done? No. Because when they're skating by, you have to make eye contact with them or else they get upset. Parents today, they would buy their kids degrees if they could. From what I've seen, every suburban middle-class parent would take out a fucking second mortgage if it meant maintaining the illusion their kid was smart or going to be a winner or good at anything.
Well, Gene, you said would they buy a degree? There's a great documentary called Varsity Blues. It's on Netflix. It's about the whole buying into college scandal. So you might want to check that out. But I agree with you. Fucking the kids back in the 80s and 90s, if they came back and they fucked up, the parents backed up the teachers. They said, you know what? You're the fuck up. And the dad, I love him. The dad is shaming him. He's like, you know what? Let's fast forward 10 years. Your brother pulls in with his Oldsmobile. He's a dentist and you're pumping gas. So the dad didn't want to do it, and I like that they had that in there. So it starts where you think that Michael Corben's going to be this cool kid, but they knock him down right away, and I like that.
But, when the movie opens up, that we got this graduation scene, and he's supposed to be that cool 90s guy, right, in high school. And he's got the headphones on and everything. I'm like, man, he's going to be a fucking dick this whole movie. But we get to see the home life. And immediately I'm coming around on Richard Grieco. He's kind of charming. And I'm so torn on this actor because he admittedly does. You cannot say he doesn't have a coolness about him. He does. He's kind of cool. He's not annoying. He's not a particularly bad actor, but there's something about him that bothers me. And I realized it's his face. It looks borderline artificial. And I did some research. I couldn't find any evidence that he had cosmetic surgery. At that time, he might have later in life, but not in his 20s. But something about his face is just inhuman. And I started thinking about it. I was listening to Real Spoilers and they were talking about Vin Diesel being, an action star. And you got to remember that in 1991, we were in this weird transition phase, right? Schwarzenegger's and Stallone's were kind of on their way out, but we kind of hadn't gone full blown Brad Pitt as our main action stars. They weren't quite pretty yet, but they weren't rugged and beefy either. Now we're in this weird phase of like Chris Pratt, Vin Diesel, and I don't know what the fuck is going on because it's like you got to be a comedian or just very off-putting to be in an action movie.
I mean, but we got to be honest. He's an attractive guy, right? Yeah, he looks a little strange, but him and Depp became, the primary stars of the show because they're attractive. They look good in underwear. He seems like a really nice guy, like you said. This movie, if anything, spun me to the side to saying, hey, I'm going to give him a chance. I thought he was just this annoying kind of dick, but he seems pretty good. He's got a limited range. I think if his career went slightly different, he could be John Stamos. That's what I think is the equivalent to him. Looks good in underwear, attractive guy, and seems nice.
But Stamos is like a fucking demigod, though. Like, he's not in the same category as Richard Grieco.
Yeah.
Like, Stamos is charming. He's clever. He's ageless. The guy's perfect. Look at Richard Grieco now. Look at John Stamos now. Come on.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Stamos has held up better for sure. But I think that with Grieco, he looks plastic. Like, he looks like he's like one of like the Madame Tussauds like wax figures of himself, but it's actually himself. And I think that there's something weird that happens with him where he looks really great because of that in pictures. But when he moves, he looks like an animatronic character like Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Like, he's just completely off. And that's why, like, when you look at the movie poster, he looks good on the movie poster. I paused the movie a couple of times and I was like, oh, okay, he's all right. And then I hit play and it was weird again. And I think that's the issue with him. And I think that's why Depp took off in place of him because, realistically, when you put them both together, they were equally as attractive in this time period. But Depp looks good in motion and Grieco just looks like plastic. He looks like saran wrap.
Yeah, it's odd. It looks like he had surgery, even though I don't think he did at that point. He looks like a young, handsome Mickey Rourke, pre-cosmetic surgery. So it's a little bit weird, but we always bitch and moan about how they will cast older actors playing high school or teenagers. This casting, I think, is the most egregious of all of them. Richard Grieco, when they filmed this movie, he was 26 years old, and he looks every day of 26. He looks like he could be the younger brother of the dad. Like, there's nothing even close that makes him believable as a high school student.
Yeah, I think an easy solution here was put him in college. Just make him a college, student, and then it explains, like, maybe he had to scrimp and save and use his savings to go on this French trip, right? As opposed to this unbelievable notion that a parent in 1991 would pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this kind of gets into where like some of my issues with the movie is that a lot of it is kind of confused from the get-go because there's this idea where they're trying to blend like the nerd and like the agent idea, but they don't quite go like all the way. And so somebody like Anthony Michael Hall, I think, would have been totally out of place with the way they tried to do this. But Grieco also is, because the way they even like the way they pose him on the poster, if you've not seen it before, like he's laying on top of like the sports car and he's got this gun on his lap and he's got his hands behind his, head and he's looking all cool. And he looks like some weird, like early Zach Morris, like the way that he's posed up there. And because of that, when he's kind of awkward and bumbly in the movie, I was confused. I didn't know what to think. Is he flippant? Is he cool? Is he nerdy? Should I not really think of him at all? And that's kind of what happened, is that he got so muddied that like Grieco wasn't able to like come through in any way and have any sort of Stamos like charisma, because the character itself was really kind of confusing from the start.
So if anybody out there listening is debating whether or not to go to their library or go to the website, Amazon.com, to order this movie, if you do get it, I would recommend that we create here the If Looks Could Kill the drinking game. Okay. Anytime they say Michael Corben, you take a sip. I played this once with a group of friends for Tom Cruise's Jack Reacher, and I was shit-faced within 40 minutes. This movie tops it. Everyone doesn't say, hey, Michael. They say, Michael Corben. Michael Corben? Where's Michael Corben? Who are you? Oh, I'm Michael Corben. No, we're looking for Michael Corben. Oh, Michael Corben's over there. They say his full name so many times. It has to be 200.
Was Jack Reacher the one where Tom Cruise is supposed to be like a really huge dude that like kicked the shit out of people?
Yeah, he's a badass. Yeah,
it says John Wick.
Yeah, he's like John Wick in that. But everyone there also is like, where is Jack Reacher? Get Jack Reacher in here. What did you do? I don't know. I was out looking for Jack Reacher. They say it so many times. This movie would be perfect for it.
Well, at the airport, a CIA agent, also named Michael Corben, is killed by the...
Yeah! See? You got to take a sip. Take a sip.
is killed by the assassin Ilsa Grunt, played by Linda Hunt, surrogate mother of the villainous Augustus Steranko, played by Roger Rees. Because important details about the agent's identity have been kept meticulously secret, Michael is mistaken for the CIA agent. He is inexplicably boarded first class on his flight to Paris, and upon arrival is whisked away by British intelligence. Okay. Anyone watching this movie as a serious action movie needs to pause and reflect. Like, if you've gotten this far in the movie and you're like, oh, this is really shitty, it's not supposed to be good. This is True Lies before True Lies.
Yep.
It's having fun with the tropes of James Bond movies, and I think it's doing a pretty good job of it. You got henchmen on snowmobiles that are like exploding on contact with anything they touch. There's a ridiculous castle stronghold. As you mentioned, George, necklaces that turn into whips. There's like deadly serving trays. And the big reveal, the secret agent Blade is Roger Daltrey of The Who. It's hilarious.
But who the fuck is Roger Daltrey's agent? In the credits, it's featuring Roger Daltrey. He headlines this movie in the credits. And you're right. You said snowmobiles. No, these aren't snowmobiles. These are quads with like some kind of rubber tread on the back. He pulls a move where he plays like bullfighter. The guy's charging him with 2 machine guns in the front of the quad, and he does like an olé and jumps out of the way, and the quad hits a stump of a tree and explodes. He's got a Zippo that shoots wire out the side. He clotheslines somebody, and the sound effects are over the top. I mean, it's like, ooh, like Wilhelm screams. There's slaps. He touches somebody on the shoulder. You could picture just beating the shit out of pillows and stuff for these sound effects. It's glorious.
Yeah, it reminded me of Cannonball Run in a way, like that these gags, you could see them from a mile away. And normally I would just kind of groan and roll my eyes at it. But like the way they're done here, they feel like familiar. They're not cheesy. They're done really, really well. And I actually laughed out loud with a couple of the reveals because they were so ridiculous. And I think what works really well in this movie, kind of like what you're talking about, Big D, is it's not just like the visual, it's the verbal, like kind of packing them together there, and they pick up the pace. Like they just start rolling out. Like I thought there was going to be like 1 or 2, like kind of like a Hot Shots thing where like, you know, they build up and it's a reveal, and then they build up and it's a reveal. But this is like one after the other after the other. And it kept it from falling flat, which was good for me because, you know, Grieco, I felt like, and this is going to be something I continue to talk about, I felt like his charm, like kind of, it was on like this downward slope beginning in like this part of the movie, but like the charm of the movie itself and like the script was kind of just increasing as he was kind of faltering for me.
This movie succeeds despite Grieco, not because of him.
Yeah.
It's what's happening around him. So you get like this airplane scene, right? And everybody is kicking ass in this airplane scene except for Richard Grieco. And 2 things surprised me about the airplane scene in this movie. One is there's a guy named Agent Kramer, and he fucking just like pulls a gun on the French teacher in the lavatory. He like pulls her into the bathroom and just fucking pulls a gun. I was like, holy shit, that was intense. And then the other surprise was we're seeing life in first class. So, you know, Michael Corben is sitting in first class. I'm like, oh, it looks pretty good. He's got a lobster and a fucking roast and champagne. But then they show his coach. It's like, look at how much coach sucks. I'm like, I don't know. They got leathery seats, plenty of leg room. They got hot food on a tray.
Yeah.
Was this real in the 90s?
Dude, this shit's fucking real today. But first of all, you said Mrs. Grober had a gun pulled on her. What about when Ilsa slaps her, like open-handed right across the mouth, and she takes it like a champ? I was like, whoa! I laughed out loud. But yes, I got to tell you, okay, as a man of simple means, I was never able to fly first class on my own, but Vanessa got her job with Delta. And Delta has something called Delta One.
Ooh.
It is the step above first class, and they do it for their international flights. I have flown this 4 times to and from Brazil. You get your own little pod. There's only 4 of them across. So 1, 2 in the middle, and on the other side. You have a little kind of door that closes your pod. I am 6'5", almost 6'6". I can flatten the bed out, and I can't touch the edge with my toes. They give you noise-canceling Bose headphones that you can use during the flight. They have a fresh omelet bar that they come by and make omelets in the morning, fresh scooped ice cream. It is, I mean, we could never afford these on our own, but it shows you how the other half lives. We flew to Brazil. Vanessa was in business because Emma, you can't sit in these unless you're over 6 years old. I woke up more refreshed after this flight, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. So first class, it is better than you can dream.
What do you think they serve, Gene and Coach? What do you think, like cold appetizers?
I mean, I've flown Coach before. I didn't get anything.
Internationally?
Lufthansa, they just get you so drunk you don't remember.
No, I mean, like I've had whenever we fly internationally, I mean, you definitely get, I mean, it's not like awesome food and it's definitely kind of plasticky, but at least it's hot. But I don't know. I have a really messed up back. And so like, this is the only, I can't imagine being in those torture devices, like in Coach, like for, 9+ hours. Like it's absolutely insane. And I watched Big D here documentary the other day about the future of airline travel and showing how they're going to stack and Coach on, international flights where like somebody's like legs and shins will be like around your ears. So
fucking sign me up.
What, to have somebody sitting on top of you?
Hell yeah.
I guess it depends on who it is.
No.
I saw they were going to do one where you're like sitting straddling something and you're basically standing up.
What would you be straddling?
It's like a seat. It's like a cushion, like a motorcycle seat.
Ooh.
So that way they can fit more rows.
No, this is what I saw. So like it's like you sit on the bottom and you pay more to sit on the top. That way your legs like drape over the person in front of you.
Yeah, sounds like fun.
Well, the late Agent Corben's mission had been to protect Augustus Steranko. Teen Michael insists he's not an agent, but agrees to play along when he's told he can use gadgets and drive a Lotus Esprit. At first, Michael enjoys the thrilling adventures the life of a spy provides, but he begins to rethink his decision after encountering Steranko's deadly assassins, including Zigsfeld, played by Tom Rack, a henchman with a prosthetic gold hand, and Areola Canasta, played by Carole Davis, who kills her victims using her poisonous pet scorpion. I love to read reviews of this podcast. I love reading up on social media. I love the comments on YouTube. And I've recently read a few criticisms of Shat the movies that suggest we're softening up in our old age and being too lenient in our Shat scores. And fuck, they might be right. Because that scene with Areola Canasta, the scorpion assassin, it's so fucking dumb. 2 years ago, I would have added a wipe to the movie just for this scene. Instead, I'm laughing like an idiot as some like cut rate Tia Carrera is trying to get a scorpion out of her nightgown while this massive stereo system that for some reason is just standard in fancy French hotels makes it look like she's the world's worst dancer. And then meanwhile, I got Richard Grieco getting turned on in his tighty whities, and then a fucking rocket launcher shows up, and I'm like, I love this movie.
I don't know if it's that we're softening up. I think it's expectations. We came into this with expectations so low that we had to scour the earth, okay? I had to go to the public library to find this. My hopes were not really that high. So as positive things came around the movie, I'm like, wow, that's kind of good. I didn't expect this. But Richard Grieco, he deserves to have some acclaim for his acting in this specific scene. I understand they're actors, but they're human beings. He is laying on the bed in his tighty whities, looking good. Areola is like kind of writhing on him. She starts kissing from like a little below his nipples down to his pelvic region. How he did not chub up is beyond me. It is a natural reaction. Gene, if you were laying there and you knew this scene was coming, Areola, her breasts are heaving out of her dress, and she's kissing your stomach down to right above your tighty whities. You tell me you're not going to chub up even 20%?
I've got an erection hearing you describe it.
Yes.
I want to point out to everybody at home that when I was reading these notes, Big D has written HDHNCU. And so I read this as Richard Grieco deserved an Oscar for this scene. How did he not crack up during the kissing scene? And I had no idea that you were going to go with chub up.
Yeah, chub up.
Crack up. But I don't know. I mean, Gene, you talk sometimes about how I'm younger than y'all. And I think this is the time when that comes through because I am not old enough to be softened to my old age because I very much groaned and rolled my eyes at this part. Most specifically, the part when they cut through, and so they're showing her and she's like writhing around doing some of the worst acting I've ever seen. And then they've got that little special effect of the blue silk of like her negligee, and then it's supposed to be like the scorpion moving around. They cut to it like 4 or 5 times, like some special effect of just somebody like rolling something around under a piece of blue silk. I thought it was ridiculous. And we talked about how egregious it was that, you know, Grieco is old in this. Y'all, he looked 40 in those tidy whities. There was something about him being in like those ugly ass underwear that he looked like a grown ass old man in this scene.
Oh my.
First of all, those are Calvin Klein's, madam. And secondly, I wish I looked like that at 40.
What 40-year-old guy you getting fucking laying down with that six pack? He looked good. He looked good. He looked really good. And Gene, you have to do your I like Venus.
Ash talking trash about Ariola Canasta. She gives us the best line in the fucking movie, which is, he lost. I like wieners. And then she unzips his pants. Like, how do you not love this movie? How do you not have hearts in your eyes at this point?
Oh, dude. And I love the fact that they know their place. They know what they're parodying. Okay. So if you think of James Bond, all the movies, he's got the Aston Martin, the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis. He's got the top end. I mean, the shit that most people don't even know exist. He's got the gadgets that just blow your mind. Michael Corben gets LA Gear suction cup sneakers. He gets armpit knockout BO gas blasters. Okay. All the product placement, he doesn't get an Aston Martin or a Ferrari. He gets a Lotus. The car chase is a Lotus, a Nissan 300ZX, and a Saab. This is fantastic bootleg product placement. And Michael Corben, he's no James Bond.
A lot of movies ripped off this plot, like moving forward. Like, I know this wasn't like incredibly successful and it was a box office, you know, bomb, but other studios would take it up and try it again. And I kept watching it going, God, this feels familiar. This feels familiar. It completely reminded me of the Frankie Muniz movie, Agent Cody Banks. Total ripoff of Grieco, the fish out of water, the teen that wants to be cool, the spy thing. And I'm not saying that like this is some classic movie, but you know, in that film, he's awkward. He looks like a nerdy kid. He, you know, kind of is that description that they had at the beginning of what they had intended with this character. And it just kind of works better here. And I think that things like that scorpion scene, things like the driving scene, the parts where he wants to be cool but isn't, I think it would have played to bigger laughs. And I think that Grieco wasn't the right one. And somebody like Frankie was better because he looked so awkward. So I think I'm coming around to the Anthony Michael Hall thing here.
Okay, counterpoint though, is that we wouldn't even notice this movie if it wasn't for Richard Grieco. Like, yes, I agree with you, Ash. In 1991, this is boneheaded casting, right? Maybe you get a Rick Moranis. Maybe you get
Rick Moranis.
But
no.
Maybe you get an Anthony Michael Hall. But the fact that it was Richard Grieco in 2021 makes it a novelty, right? Like, now it is a classic. They were thinking 30 years ahead. Like, why would people want to watch this movie in 2021? Because it's got Richard Grieco playing a teenage kid who failed at French and is now mistaken for a spy.
No, this is if looks could kill. He's got to be the hot dude. You're not going to do Rick Moranis. Do you remember our complaints about Inner Space when he tries to be like the secret agent? It would have been a disaster.
But If Looks Could Kill was not the original name of the movie. It was Teen Agent. They changed it to If Looks Could Kill for Richard Grieco.
No, I think the casting was spot on. Perfect.
Well, Stranko captures Michael's teacher and classmates and holds them all hostage at his remote stronghold. Michael teams up with a girl his own age named Mariska, played by Gabrielle Anwar, the daughter of Agent Blade, who was murdered by Stranko and his gang. Despite being briefly imprisoned by Stranko's men, Michael escapes, rescues Mrs. Grober and his friends, and battles and defeats Ziegfeld.
So I think one of the underutilized talent in this film is Robin Bartlett. She plays Mrs. Grober. We get her in the beginning. She's extremely funny. You'll feel like you've seen her in every 80s and 90s movie that's out there, playing the neighbor, the mom, some woman in the neighborhood, but it's not. But she is underutilized. And we get this B plot. So we get Michael. He's out becoming a spy. He's learning the ropes about the mission. He's getting trained. He's out there undercover. But then we got to find out what's going on with the school trip. So that B plot, we only get the little bits of the entire school, like the class trip on the bus. But they do one great repeating gag that I really enjoyed. The bus driver keeps getting killed off. Like at first, the normal bus driver gets killed. They replace him with an agent who's going to kill them. Then he gets replaced with an agent who's going to protect him. Then an agent who's going to kill him. And each time the new bus driver gets on and the teacher says, "Bonjour, Pierre," or "Bonjour," whatever the guy's name is, I found myself enjoying it, but I wish we got more.
And what I loved about it, too, was that the driver got progressively bad at impersonating a driver. Like, by the end, it was just like, ugh. Did we need more students on a bus? Did we need more of this? I think it was just the right amount.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it that way, yeah, probably would have taken away from the action, but...
Yeah, the scintillating action of this movie. And honestly, until we get to this, like, stronghold, the movie is doing pretty well. Like, it was doing okay, but then we get, of course, the morality play, right? Which is Michael needs to grow up and follow through. We're going to make something serious about this movie. And as soon as they make that decision where he meets the girl and he realizes, you know, she's talking to him about, you got to save your friends and this is serious and you got to save me. They're going to kill us all. Suddenly, we're getting these attempts at dramatic scenes between Michael and Mariska. And that tone shifts from a comedy with some action to an action movie with some comedy. And it's not all bad from that point forward, but this movie would have been better served with a parody tone throughout.
I couldn't agree more. It's almost like it became like they intended for it to be like they have this like coming of age piece at the end, you know, where like I think that thing that John Hughes, that Joss Whedon eventually would do so well is they would ride this line between sentimentality and cheesy and taking itself too seriously. And they could have benefited from a Hughes or a Whedon or even like a Marty Noxon here to write, because it forgot how to be charming in the end because it did start to take itself so seriously. And I think that's just not what we were set up for before the end. And it was a bummer because like it was clipping along really, really well. And like it was really fun. And then it just kind of took this turn where the brakes got put on, where all of a sudden, kind of like at the beginning when I was talking about confusing about who the character was, it's confusing as to, well, what kind of movie like is it at this point? Because it wasn't quite as like lighthearted as it had been the rest of the time.
They obviously set the movie up to be, you know, possibly a franchise, that they were going to do more films of him. So I wonder if they wanted to show his capability as an action star in case you shifted that way. Because even though I think he was cast perfectly for the role, I think there is that, what do we do with him? Okay, he's good looking. Let's get him in his underwear in a bed. Okay, he's charming. He'll, you know, hit it off with the ladies. I think they almost like twisted the movie to fit him in that way. And that could have been better served with a different actor.
What would have been better, though, is if he fucked up his way to winning, right? As opposed to, like, suddenly he's got a submachine gun. He's doing that, you know, side-to-side spraying thing and hitting people from fucking 100 yards away. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting you bring up action stars because there's this debate that's happening like in the public discourse right now about, of all people, Chris Pratt and this movie that he was just in, The Tomorrow War, which you mentioned a few minutes ago, Gene. And the argument is that, like, what are we doing with our modern day action hero? And so there was this editorial about how like the modern day action star from like the 80s and the 90s is gone, and that Tom Cruise is the only remaining action star left, like a true like classic action star. And so they started breaking down what it takes in order for somebody to legitimately carry an action franchise. So they talked about Keanu Reeves, they talked about Jason Statham, they talked about Tom Cruise, and a couple of other people that, you know, have that characteristic where they're ruggedly, you know, good looking, they're charming, they can smile, they can make you laugh, they can make you feel good, but they can also make you like excited and buy that they're doing all this shit. And so then you've got somebody like Chris Pratt who comes in and, you know, he's Andy from Parks and Rec for most people when they look at him. Like he just looks like this kind of bumbling guy that used to be like really heavy that like all of a sudden went to CrossFit often. Like that's what he always is going to look like in terms of his body type. And if you don't allow him to be charming and goofy, he just comes across as wooden. He comes across like a Dave Bautista, where like when you take him out of the paint and the makeup that he has with Drax on him, like, you know, that he's just not interesting anymore. He's just like a stand-in. And I think that's what you've got here with Grieco, is it proves that we talk all the time about how hard it is to do comedy and how hard it is to do drama, but like it's really fucking hard to do action too. And if you aren't the right person for it, then it just really, really doesn't work.
Well, I'm going to try to answer, I think, for every listener out there who's screaming at their radio right now. We have an 80s and 90s action star currently with us. Charismatic, can do action, gets you involved in the comedy. His name is The Rock. He does all of it very well. He's charismatic. He can deliver funny lines, whether it's in the Jumanji reboot, or he could do those stupid action like a Schwarzenegger movie, like the Skyscraper movie where he jumps around. He's now playing a superhero in Black Adams. He's done the Fast and Furious movies. I think he is our version of a hybrid Schwarzenegger, Stallone, that whole mix of things with some charisma.
So the editorial talks about him, and it talks about how he's not ruggedly, like classically good looking like Tom Cruise is. And so that's the problem. You've got to be a sex symbol, and you've got to be a sex symbol in a way that makes you relatable. Because yes, The Rock is objectively like super attractive, but he's fucking terrifying. Like I would not want that walking up to me naked in a bedroom. Like he's just too much. Like you need to be able to like handle a Tom Cruise. You know, The Rock is just, he's too big.
So would you have taken on, like, let's say a Conan, like an 80s Schwarzenegger at his peak? No? Stallone?
I am not woman enough for Conan.
A Rocky? Would you handle Rocky?
No, I think Stallone's really unattractive. So.
Van Damme?
No, although his splits are nice.
So I don't think any of them are particularly handsome. I think The Rock is a fair.
Tom Cruise is, Keanu Reeves is, Patrick Swayze was.
Yeah, but they weren't the big action, the super.
What are you talking about? Tom Cruise is like the biggest action star in the world. Crazy, but a great action star.
Well, Stranko kidnaps Mariska and attempts to escape with his gold in his helicopter. Michael manages to rescue Mariska, and Stranko is subsequently killed when he falls out of the helicopter. Afterward, Mrs. Grober agrees to give Michael the French credit that he needs.
I will say one thing that the movie does in the end, like the whole ending segment, is that it parodies Bond films in a way that is so smart because it could have fucking been one. Like the plot of this movie is not far off at all from what the plot of an actual Bond film is. And the ending feels like an actual Bond movie. Those movies are ridiculous and they're very serious, but they're ridiculous and dumb. Like that one Bond opening where like he like falls on a horse, or the one with Daniel Craig where he's like running through a building that's falling apart. Like it's so stupid, but people watch it. And that's what this felt like here. And I really think, you know, Big D, when you're talking about like a series, I think that's definitely what they were aiming to do. And with the right PR campaign, this could have been like the junior to the senior Bond, the same way that like young Indy tried to be to Indiana Jones, because you had the villains, you got those mic drop moments. It just works. It ties it up nicely. And I don't know, if I'm in like the Bond universe, I'm revisiting this because, you know, I don't know what, 006, 007.5, like, you know, so there's some opportunity there.
Austin Powers, you have Dr. Evil, but all of those are like over the top caricatures. They never take the movie seriously enough. Augustus plays it like a serious movie. They're like, you know, just kill him. He's like, no one talks to me. I want to talk to him. And he sits him down at dinner and of course reveals the whole plan like the Bond supervillains do. And the movie script is surprisingly funny. When I think it's going to just be just completely dumb and run its course, they throw lines that I would normally cringe at. You get the French teacher, spoiler alert, who's now, she's gotten Uzi. She's put the bandana around her head. She's now the French resistance fighter. She's up at the top. She like sprays the crowd. She's like, the bar's closed. I was like, yes.
And I got a plot of Looks Could Kill for this casting of everybody around Richard Grieco. You got multiple weirdos as goons. I was convinced that Ziegfeld was Brian Ferry, and I thought Jean-Luc, the imposter driver, was like Christopher Reeve with a prosthetic on his face. Linda Hunt, who we've seen in Dune and Kindergarten Cop. Some dude who looks like Vernon Dursley. I swear I thought that was Mr. Dursley, who's like playing the German finance minister. But beyond all those, Big D, you called it. The standout performance is Roger Rees as Stranko. So if you guys watched like Cheers, he was Robin from Cheers, like talking about a guy who understood the role completely. This is not goofing on your own movie. It's playing your character so perfectly that it's goofy.
Another character that I loved was Michael Siebery plays Richardson. He is the serious secret British agent. He's like the liaison for Michael Back. The dialogue there, he plays it so deadpanned and so serious that when you put it next to Michael's scenes, it makes it work. And Gabrielle Anwar, she was in Scent of a Woman. That's the only other movie I can remember her from is Mariska. But she is Emily Blunt She's today's Emily Blunt before Emily Blunt. I'm surprised that her career didn't take off. This movie had so many talented people that I feel like after this, I don't know that I saw them again.
Well, and I want to go back to Linda Hunt that you mentioned here. You know, Linda Hunt, I feel like should always be praised. She's one of those like random actors from this area that a lot of people know her face but don't know her name. But like she's like iconic. She was the first person to get an Oscar for playing someone of the opposite sex in 1983. And she's fucking Grandmother Willow from Pocahontas. And she has range. She's tiny, but she makes the most of absolutely every movie that she's in. I fucking love her.
Unless we forget her greatest role in Kindergarten Cop.
And I had to laugh at the end there where the helicopter's going down and he says he has to save weight and he throws all, 75 pounds of her out of the helicopter. That's not going to help you get airborne.
All right, now is the time when we give our wipe scores for If Looks Could Kill. The wipe scores are our way of telling you how many wipes a movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 Wipes is a perfect movie. It is a young Richard Grieco in his tidy whities, running around with his combat condoms, looking fly as fuck. And 5 Wipes is an absolute disaster. It's a rocket launcher shooting into your hotel room and hitting you while you're dancing around with a scorpion in your nightgown. Guys, I think this is a tight movie. I wasn't bored for a second. They kept things moving along. And as a parody, it's pretty good. But I gotta admit, Richard Grieco is very distracting as the lead. And that's probably why this movie tanked, as did his 21 Jump Street spinoff show. I don't understand why the filmmakers decided to shift the tone at the end. I think this is a hidden gem that was much better than I expected, and it's better than average at 2 Wipes.
Gene, I totally agree with you. I'm also going to give it 2 Wipes. I think it is fun. I think it is impossible to hate. It surprised me. Richard Grieco, he takes it just serious enough. You said it in the beginning. There's just something that's off. Something we can't put our finger on it. And it's sad because I think if he had that thing, he could have been the Johnny Depp. He could have been the Tom Cruise, but he's not. Okay. This movie is fun. It's quick. It was enjoyable. If I was 10 years old, man, this would have been my favorite movie. And it was well worth my trip to the local library. So definitely 2 Wipes for me, a pleasant surprise. And thank you, George, for commissioning this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pacing of this movie is good. It clips along. There's enough action, dialogue, jokes. I think it works for the most part. But like we've talked about, it's just this little bit of an identity crisis. It gets way too serious with this weird coming of age piece at the end. And because of that, it gets a little too messy to be like super memorable. But I still do think it's way better than average. I think it'd be a really good product for a remake. We talk about that sometimes, right? That there's like a film that's sitting there that was almost perfect. We talked about Seventh Sign last week. Like that is a perfect movie to go back and figure out how to redo. I think this one too, because the plot is kind of timeless. You know, you just change a couple of things and it would still work in 2021. And with another person at the lead, I think it could have easily been a series that, you know, everybody from like 10-year-olds up to like, you know, parents that go see the movies with them could have really enjoyed. I don't think it's quite 2 Wipes. I think it's a little bit closer to average than that. So I'm going to go 2.25, but I am proud to say that this is the DVD that I own and that it is not a waste and that maybe one day when we own something that plays DVDs, we'll be able to watch it together as a family.
2.25 Wipes from Ash, 2 Wipes from me and Big D. That brings us to an average of 2.083 repeating wipes for If Looks Could Kill.
So, Gene, with a score of 2.083 repeating wipes, that now ties this movie in the 103 spot with The Color of Money and Crimson Tide. It is slightly better than From Dusk Till Dawn and The Sandlot, and it is slightly worse than Tombstone, Beverly Hills Cop, and The Blues Brothers. Let the hate mail flow.
Yeah, before you line up the firing squad, comedies and dramas are not the same thing. I'm not saying this is as good as Crimson Tide or The Color of Money. And a big part of that calculation is, would you want to sit down and watch it right now? And this is a movie I think you could just, if it was on TV and you're at your hotel room and you're about to go out in Vegas, you might not make it out that night.
Yeah, I mean, I'd watch this any day over Color of Money, but the thing I prickled up with was The Sandlot. This isn't as good as The Sandlot.
The Sandlot's trash.
The Sandlot is fucking amazing.
When's the last time you saw it? It's misogynistic propaganda.
About 2 weeks ago with my kid. He watches it all the time.
You think it's okay to play unconscious and force kiss a chick? That's assault, brother.
Okay. So just for the record, Gene gave it a 4. I gave it a 1. And I think it was Kevin Brackett. Didn't Kevin Brackett give it like a... who was the third? Were you on it, Ash?
No, that is before my time, but I would have given it a 1.
So for the Sandlot, it looks like... I thought Kevin Brackett was on there, but it wasn't. I guess it was Roger gave it a 1.5. I gave it a 1, and Gene gave it a 4.
Gene fucking Lyons.
Yeah.
You got your magical Negro. You got your sexual assault. Yeah, it's a great movie, guys.
Fucking love that movie, man.
I think also, wasn't there a hint of like the father abusing one of the kids? I don't know.
No, nobody hints at anybody's being abused. It's the fucking Sandlot. It's a beautiful American story about a time gone by that we don't have anymore, and the importance of baseball, because baseball is the best fucking sport.
Yeah, and I counter Gene's recollection of that assault on the pool deck. I gave him credit. That was a ballsy move. That was a baller move.
Yeah, I mean, it got him to have her as an incubator for all of his babies for all time. So
hell yeah, it worked
out great.
High five.
Anyway, Big D, do we have any voicemail this week?
We do, Gene. We have 2 voicemail this week that are taking issue with the review of Back to the Future Part 3. So our first one comes from William from Oklahoma, and he wants to talk about Doc and Clara.
Hey, guys. My name is Will. I'm from Norman, Oklahoma. I've listened to your podcast forever. Currently driving to work, and I was in the middle of your Back to the Future 3 podcast, and I had to call. There was a part where you guys were talking about like how they kind of got sloppy during Part 3, where Doc and Marty were at the train trying to figure out how to get home, and they met Clara that way, and there was no way that would have happened in the original. But if you go back to the movie, there's a scene where the mayor asks Doc to go pick up the new school teacher, who is Clara. And after that, when they're trying to figure out to go home, Doc says, well, she can figure out her own way to get home. And that's how she falls off the ravine. So it's not a mess up. They explain that right away. Doc would have met her originally had Marty not gone back in time. So, again, Ashley's right. Marty's very responsible, although he was trying to save Doc. So, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to go to work, but you guys are awesome, and I appreciate the show. I listen to you every time on my Wednesday. It's my early day. And, yeah, have a great one. Thanks. Bye.
So to clarify, that was a Kevin Brackett assertion, but I'm gonna speak not on his defense, but just on his behalf, I would say. So, Will, I don't know if you're Will Martinez, because on Facebook, Will Martinez also brought up this issue. So to explain this to people who are listening, what the issue is that basically what Kevin was saying is it's awfully convenient that Doc and Marty had to be right there on the train tracks right when Clara went by so that he could rescue her. This is what happens with time travel shit. It's explaining it verbally without like a fucking drawing on a chalkboard is terrible. But prior to Doc going back to 1885 ever, Clara dies. That's why the ravine is named after her, because she got there on the train, she got on her wagon, and she rode it off the ravine because the horses went wild, right? In the time that Doc was there, he meets her at the train station, and then she doesn't die in the ravine, and so it's not named after her. But then when Marty goes back and meets Doc, so he doesn't meet her at the train station, so now she is supposed to die in the ravine, but they rescue her, right? So the whole idea there is that there's 3 possible timelines, and they're getting rewritten, right? Doc was never there, she dies. Doc was there and met her. Doc was there, but Marty was there, and she nearly died, right? And so that's the clarification there. So I don't know if Kevin was wrong necessarily, because all he was saying was mighty fucking convenient that in this timeline she also doesn't die the same way that she also didn't die when Doc did meet her. That probably didn't help at all.
And if I'm correct, in the end it's named the Eastwood Ravine, am I right?
Yeah, because now she's on a flying train
with Jules and Vern.
Oh, it's because of Clint Eastwood. Yes, exactly. So our next call comes from Sean from Minnesota, and he also wants to talk about Back to the Future Part 3, except the Delorean Paradox. So here's what Sean had to say.
Hi, this is Sean from Eden Prairie, Minnesota. I just wanted to call and discuss the Back to the Future Part 3 episode and the Delorean Paradox. So you've got the 1885 DeLorean and the mine, and then Marty brings the 1955 DeLorean back to 1885. And the question was posed, why can't you just put the 2 of them together, take the gas from one, the parts from another, and kind of make it all work. The issue with that is, from a time travel perspective, if you touch that 1885 DeLorean that's in the mine shaft, it no longer reaches Marty in 1955. So therefore, there isn't a DeLorean to bring back to 1885. So then Marty disappears, the 1955 DeLorean disappears, that comes back. So you can't have both of the DeLoreans in one space and time interact with one another. And the DeLorean doesn't reach Marty in 1955 to come back and save Doc in 1885. Hope that helps clear everything up. Looking forward to the discussion. Maybe some others will call in and have other thoughts as well. Thank you for all that you do. Take care.
Well, Sean, I want to start by saying thank you for using my coin term, the DeLorean Paradox. I feel like I've joined the ranks of Back to the Future history here. We didn't say blow the fucking DeLorean up. We just said take the fuel out of it and put it in the other one. That's it.
And not even like all the fuel, like just siphon off enough to get the fucker started. Like it doesn't have to be like the whole tank.
Now, the question was posed by a lot of people, if the DeLorean can fly, though, and it had a Mr. Fusion on it, then why wouldn't you just fly it to the right speed? But you got to remember that the flight systems
it got fried,
were damaged in the lightning strike, so it can't fly.
I love the way we're talking about this like it's a historical fact. You must remember it was damaged by the lightning strike.
Again, listen, like it's all up for debate, right? It's never explicitly stated that the lightning strike fucked up the flight systems. You can only imagine that. We know that it fucked up the time circuits, and we would just imagine that it also did the flight system. So to be clear, Mr. Fusion runs the time circuits and powers the flight systems. Gasoline powers the DeLorean drivey part.
The drivey part.
The drivey part. But thanks, Sean. Thanks, Sean, for calling in. And I'm sure we'll get more calls about these calls and my responses. So we can just make a whole Back to the Future pod.
Yeah, so that's all of our voicemails this week, Gene. And next week, we will be reviewing a movie that if you think it was hard to find this movie, next week, I don't know what we're going to do. It is a very obscure movie, but it's something I'm extremely excited to watch. And in this film, the world has been divided into two opposing superpowers, with each side represented by trained champions. Their weapons are huge robotic machines capable of battle on land, sea, or air. This was commissioned by John M. It was released in 1990. It was a budget of $10 million. It only made 1.3 back at the box office. But from everyone who's heard of this, and when people heard we were reviewing it, people were excited.
When John Butter Hutt brought up that he wanted us to do this movie on the Twitch stream, people were losing their minds about it, and I am fucking pumped for this one.
Yeah, and to the people who've recently been complaining, being like, go back to the voting. These movies have sucked recently. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Yes, we've done some random stuff lately, but if you go back and look, in our last batch of movies, Platoon, Back to the Future Part 3, yes, we had Harley and Davidson and the Marlboro Man, we had Student Bodies, we had Internal Affairs, Johnny Dangerously, but we had Happy Gilmore, Purple Rain, Inner Space, Dazed and Confused. You got to take the good with the bad. And honestly, we like the voting system, but the voting system doesn't keep the lights on, folks. So we got to make the people happy. And a lot of times I think that the most pleasure I get out of this podcast, besides connecting with people, is finding movies that we've missed, or exposing people to movies that they've never watched, or forcing them to go back and revisit it. So I think that's what these random movies do.
Yeah, I would argue that this is more democratic than the voting system, because when we did the voting system, we put up the nominees, right? Mm-hmm. In this case, it's like, if you want a movie and it means something to you, we want to see it so that we understand you better and that we can give you our opinion on it. I think it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, we're not setting the parameters. Otherwise, that's within our wheelhouse. And I've gotten exposed to some really cool films. Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, fucking great film. I never would have seen. It's glorious.
Apparently, people don't think it's as good as The Crow, but whatever.
That's the one you pick out of the bag. Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
It was great. And The Crow is the great soundtrack.
Well, that concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com, or call us like William and Sean did at 914-719-SHAT and leave a voicemail. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatontv.com. You can support us by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. And thank you to George for commissioning this movie, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
It's a new age of combat.
Human beings, genetically engineered to be the best fighters in history.
2 champions.
It isn't over until someone wins.
At war with each other.
Kill it! I have already killed you.
2 invincible men.
Let's finish it, Alexander, here now.
The ultimate killing machines.
I'm gonna get in this thing, and I'm gonna kick your...
Not for me.
Robot jocks.